What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to show you how to take a project that goes completely wrong and turn it into something awesome. Don't give up, don't throw the stuff away, just use a little ingenuity and you can make something really cool even when things go wrong. My name's Jeremy and this is J Payne Woodworking. Let's get at it. I started off by squaring off the ends of these pallet wood boards. These are just the horizontal stripes of a pallet that are cut off with a circular saw, and then moved to the table saw and used the jointer sled to flatten off one edge of the boards so that I could then rip them down to the proper size. After getting all of the boards ripped down to dimension, I laid all of the boards out on some clamps so I could try to figure out the best way for the grain to lay and what I thought would look best with the Soja Bond finish. And after that, I laid down some tape on the clamps. This is just to stop some of the glue from sticking to the clamps and makes cleanup a little bit easier. And then laid the boards back out and used some tight bond wood glue and glued all of the boards into a flat panel. I also wound up adding an upper clamp on the top of the boards, and I was kind of hoping this would keep it from warping as much or keep the boards from moving around. And it did work some, but honestly, it didn't work perfectly. It was kind of my fault. I know what I did wrong and learned from the lesson. So I'll do something on that later on so you guys can see what I did wrong. But after the glue was completely hardened, I moved the panel over to the CNC and used a 1-inch flattening bit to flatten out the entire panel where the flag, or the initial idea of the flag, was going to lay. Once the entire panel was flattened out, I went ahead and started the Soja Bond burn. And what this does is it burns the wood and adds a really nice contrasted look. As you can see, the grains of the wood don't burn as much along some of the more wavy parts, and then the flat, tighter grains of the wood darken up almost to a black. Now, this little torch from Walmart, it did do a really good job. You see a lot of people using garden torches, and they do a little better. But for doing this indoors and on a smaller panel like this, this little benzomatic torch done just fine. Now, one thing with it is I was going horizontally across the panel for the majority of the first few passes, and it did work, but I felt like there might be inconsistent or like wavy lines where the burn patterns would not be consistently straight. So I moved to more of a circular technique, and that seemed to give more of a uniform burn as I went down the panel. This is also where things kind of started to go awry. Now, what I had planned was to make this into a flag with the Soja Bond burn being the main colors and the stripes of the white stripes of the flag being a more raw colored wood. But as you can see, the panel is starting to bow. This is due to the fact that I had to cut the panel so thin to flatten out all of the pallet wood. And as you can see on the end, you can watch the panel start to warp pretty bad. And this just kind of made me sick to my stomach. So I literally had to stop the process once it was finished and figure out what I was going to do with this panel after that, as it was not going to work at all for a flag. So I decided I was going to turn it into a shop sign, something that was backlit and looked pretty cool, but would just be made out of a bunch of scrap materials that I had lying around the shop. And that way, honestly, it wouldn't cost too much. And also, it would let me just try out some new techniques that I haven't tried before. So I went back to the CNC and cut out my logo for a backer board for the sign, as well as all of the letters for my logo. and then laid down a piece of 1/4 inch Lexan and used a 1/8 inch upcut bit from Bits and Bits, with all of the settings on the CNC slowed way down. I believe this was running at around 10,000 RPM spindle speed and somewhere around 40 or 50 inches per minute as far as feed rate. This would stop the Lexan from melting as bad and give a really nice clean cut with less chipping as well. This is pretty much just an outline of my logo, and this is going to be where the letters I previously cut out would be mounted to, and it would give a backlight for the LEDs to shine through. I also used a diamond drag bit on that bubbled sized background to engrave where these individual letters would be laid out, and it would make placing the letters in the proper position and alignment much easier later on. I was then able to use the Dremel tool and a cutoff wheel to cut the tabs and remove all of the individual letters, and just some quick small sanding by hand before spraying them with black spray paint gave them a really clean look. After letting the letters dry completely, I moved on to placing the letters onto the Lexan backer for the sign. Now, as you'll see in a second, the engraved letters on the Lexan make placing these extremely easy. Now, it's not completely foolproof as they can move around, but if you just take your time, the alignment comes out perfect. And this will give you the perfect fitment for all of the letters. You'll have really nice spacing and everything lays out exactly as it should. I placed these down just using some Star Bond adhesives, and I would place down some of the adhesive onto the Lexan and then spray the back of the letter with some Star Bond accelerator. So when I placed the letters down, it was literally 3 to 4 seconds and they were set in place. This worked really, really well, and the letters wound up laying out perfectly. After the letters were all laid out, I wanted to start working on the hanging frame for the sign. There was going to be a backboard with the logo cut out, and then the acrylic with the letters on it protruding from that in a 3D type look. But I needed a frame that would, one, allow me to hold the backboard and align everything properly, as well as hide some of the LED strips that would be needed to light up the Lexan and give me the backlight type property for underneath the backboard of the sign. For this, I used the table saw and just created a dado down the center of what would be the top of the frame, and this would allow that 1/4 inch MDF backboard for the sign to be glued into place, and also give me spacing in front and behind of that backboard to run the LEDs and then be hidden by the front edge of the frame. I then added a Soja Bond burn to the frame, and this was oak, so it gave a bit of a different look, like the colors were not near as dark as with the mostly pine of the pallet wood. So it was a really nice contrast once it was laid on the backboard or background of the pallet wood panel. To lay out the positioning of the frame, I marked off the positions of the sides of the frame where it would lay center of the background, and then used some masking tape to give me a nice defined line to lay the frame with. Now, this is a simple technique and works great for laying out really anything you want to lay out. And I also laid a piece horizontally across the background that was marked where I wanted the top of the frame to be. And this would center out the sign onto the background. To attach the frame to the background, I drilled 3 small pilot holes, and these would allow for small wood screws to go through the back of the background and hold the frame and the sign in place on the background, as well as give a very secure fixture and not worry about it wobbling around too much. I then installed the backboard of the sign into the frame using some Star Bond adhesives and tapping it into place, and then laid the frame underneath the background lined up with the tape and screwed it into place using some short wood screws. With the frame in place, I was able to drill this 5/8 inch hole into the background. This would allow me to run the LED strips underneath the backer board of the sign and completely hide them while still getting the most lighting effect and not having the LEDs show outside of the sign. Once the hole was drilled, I moved on to soldering some extension pieces onto the LEDs. If you have never done this before, it is quite simple, but you really need to take your time as soldering these small connection points can be a little bit of a pain. I then laid the LEDs out underneath the backer of the sign. I had to remove the LEDs and then lay them back in a different arrangement multiple times after testing just to get the proper lighting effect that I wanted. But this was really simple as the LED strips are held into place with a double-sided tape that comes with the LED strips. So don't be afraid to test multiple times and then change things up if you need to. Make sure you have the proper lighting and test it multiple times. I then placed the acrylic panel with the letters into place using some 1/4 inch wide, 2 inch long pillars that I had made from some of the previously used oak strips. So there it is, guys, the finished sign. I hope this shows you that you can overcome any issues with a project. Just be willing to switch gears and adapt, and you can make something really, really cool even when things go wrong. So I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can see all the new videos coming out. And if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. That really helps this channel grow, and I really appreciate that. Also, if you want more videos and photos, make sure to check me out on Instagram at jpaynewoodworking. And then also for more detailed articles and things like that of my projects and more, check out jpaynewoodworking.com. So we'll see you guys on the next one, and I had a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.